And we're back. All right. Now, I want to talk to you about the movement of money, okay? And before I get into that, I do want to stop and take a second and just say, if you might be thinking, man, this is taking a while. This is a lot of stuff. I didn't know this was going to be this many videos. I want you to please understand that these principles are very important. And not only are they important, but even though they might seem like a lot of information, but then in the grand scheme of things, okay, well, this is such a small thing. How is this going to make a huge outcome in my life? I want to ask you to consider one story that I heard a long time ago. And it's really an analogy that if you were to get on a sailboat and you chart a course for your end destination, and you think, okay, this is where I'm going to end up, and you start sailing. If someone were to make a 1 degree, just a 1 degree shift while you're on that boat, that 1 degree might not seem like a big deal. But over the course of you sailing on that journey, you're going to end up in a vastly different place on your destination than you set out for. Now, the same can be said for money. The movement of money sometimes doesn't seem like a big deal. Where you place your money or who's earning interest, oh, that extra percentage point on the interest doesn't make a big deal to me. It's just not a big deal. But ultimately, that's what the banks utilize in order to grow their wealth. That's what the government, all of the entities, the financial institutions work off of these principles of those little small 1 degree shifts in multiple places in different areas in all of these financial systems. And ultimately, that's what leads them to growing massive wealth. So when we talk about the movement of money on a macro and a micro scale, these principles are important. So let's get back to some teachings, and then we're going to get deeper into some numbers. Right now, we're definitely at the higher level scale of looking at these things from a macro perspective, and then we're going to dial into more deep, specific numbers, if that makes sense. So without further ado, let's talk about the movement of money. So let's just take, for example, a nice new sports car. Now, the price doesn't matter. Obviously, more expensive cars, the numbers would be higher, but just for the sake of simple numbers and simple math, let's look at a $25,000 sports car. If you finance that at the bank at 6%, you go to the bank and you say, hey, for 60 months, I want to pay on this car. What's my monthly payment going to be with my credit score and all those things taken into account? The banker is then going to lend you the money based on those parameters. Now, that car will probably go down in value the more miles you put on it, okay? But the future value of that car that you end up paying, if you're paying $483 a month, eventually the car you will have paid $28,980, okay? Now, obviously, if the car is worth less, you're gonna have to make up the difference when you sell the car and try to sell the car for more or the same amount that you bought it for, but that doesn't really ever happen, right? We all know that. You lose money on cars for the most part. Now, let's think about a hypothetical situation here. What if you could find a bank that gave you, let's say, 2% interest, or on the best case, 4% interest? It's a hypothetical bank. What would it look like at 4% interest, that same $25,000 that you would have put towards a car, paying someone else 6%? And you're making 4% with a different $25,000, or for the sake of this argument, the same $25,000. You have your own private bank that you can put money into that will net you that 4% at 60 months. You will have grown your money to $30,525. $30,525 over the $28,980. Now, please take note of this. The 4% is a smaller number than the 6%. You're financing something at 6%. You're taking that car, something of value, of monetary value, and it'll eventually be worth, quote unquote, what you paid for it, which is $28,980. Because of the interest that you paid to the bank, you actually end up paying more for the car than the $25,000. But if you were to take that same $25,000 and put it in a high interest account at 4%, and 4 is less than 6, on one side you're growing the money, on the other side you're paying it down, you actually made, let's see here, $1,545. That's how much more you make paying yourself interest over paying for something and paying someone else interest on that same monetary amount, $25,000. So it's an interesting concept, right? Now, what would it look like? I'm going to kind of challenge your brain. What would it look like if you could figure out how you can become the bank and pay yourself interest back on the money that was paid to the banks? You can pay yourself that same interest. You're probably thinking, is that possible? Yes, it is. So first of all, we need to talk about the vehicle to get to that point. Then we need to talk about the pace of that vehicle. Then we need to talk about the goal, the end goal of that vehicle and where we're going. Now, here's something to consider. Every time you set out on a journey, right? Let's say you want to take a trip across country. You're probably going to take into consideration what to drive. Maybe you need to take something that's got enough room for multiple people. You need it to be reliable because you don't want to break down on the way. You also need to get good gas mileage, right? Especially with gas prices the way they are now. If you're watching this in the summer of 2022, gas prices are astronomical. Now, with that said, if you're taking a short trip just down to the local coffee shop, you're probably going to take a different vehicle than you would take across country. Maybe you've got a sports car you want to take, and it's fun and it's flashy and it's fast, but it doesn't get the greatest gas mileage. And you're afraid of maybe getting a scratch on it, so you don't want to take it across country. The point is here, you're going to take different vehicles for different things in life, and the same is true with the financial industry. So let's talk about the vehicle that you're going to take on a journey. The pace. That vehicle needs to go a certain speed in order to accomplish your goals. So again, if you're going down to the local coffee shop, you can go a little bit faster. Now, if you're going to go across country, you probably want to abide by those speed limits because you don't want to get pulled over, which is just going to set you back on your trip and ultimately cost you more money. And then if you are out of state, I don't know if this has happened to you before, but it's happened to me. Getting a speeding ticket out of state is not fun because then you have to go back to that state or hire a lawyer. And then the end goal is, what is the goal of the trip? So let's talk about this for a minute. The vehicle. Ultimately, you want to design a financial vehicle that is going to get you certain things. Now, if you want upside and you just want to risk your money and you want to gamble your money, maybe you look at some cryptocurrency or a stock, right? Those things are never guaranteed in life. So pick your vehicle based on what you want it to do. The pace. This is a marathon, not a sprint. When I say this, I mean your financial life should be a marathon and not a sprint. Now, you can have little sprints in there, right? Because you want to make more money or you want to go after something that you think is going to pay off. But ultimately, building real wealth, the way the Rockefellers do, is not a sprint. It is a series of marathons over a long period of time. We are not talking about getting rich quick here. We're talking about getting wealthy in a guaranteed way slowly. And then the goal is obviously to create as much monetary abundance as you can. Now, I'm going to stop here and I want to say that that number is going to be different for everybody. It's important that you don't compare your number and what you want to get to and your way of living. That is going to look different from person to person, business to business, and family to family. Now, with that said, let's talk about the vehicle. With a lot of these strategies, I told you earlier in these videos to try and keep an open mind. A lot of these strategies and a lot of the ways to compound wealth and earn interest and pay interest to yourself and pay down debts faster or to accelerate other investment strategies, the vehicle and the motor to get this done is a very stout, slow-moving, but guaranteed, that's right, participating whole life insurance contract. Now, let's kind of pause there for a second because this is where we lose about 30% of people in any presentation or any conversation with a general investor or even just a normal person who says, hey, I want to learn the rules of money. You traditionally are taught that life insurance is to buy a death benefit. You've been taught to buy term and invest the difference. Here is where it is very vastly important to realize that participating whole life insurance contracts are not normal life insurance. These contracts also have to be written with a specific company, a mutually owned company. It cannot be done with a stock insurance company. The dividend paying aspect of these is where the paid up additions rider, and I'll get to that in a little bit, that is where the cash that you stuff into these vehicles is important. And then last but not least, it has to be a non-direct recognition loan feature, meaning the loan that you have out to withdraw your money from your bank has to be a non-direct, and I'll get to that in a little bit. And it goes a little bit deeper, and it's a little bit more of a than a surface level conversation, but I think it'll make sense to you. So for those of you that are still with us, that you didn't tune out as soon as somebody said insurance to you, right? Because again, these are all just strategies that I'm showing you have been used by the wealthy for long, long periods of time, okay? Now, BOLI and COLI. BOLI stands for bank-owned life insurance. COLI stands for corporate-owned life insurance. Why is that important? Because instead of writing these strategies and methodologies off, it's important to do your own research. Again, go research BOLI and look at how much, I'm just going to give you an example here in a second. Look at how much insurance, life insurance contracts that these companies own. Now, again, we're going to get into the difference between a normal life insurance policy and specifically designed participating whole life and how we can utilize that vehicle to do what we want. Example, how much BOLI do banks own? $182.2 billion is the total cash surrender value of all policy owned by banks. Most banks, in fact, it's roughly 2/3 of all banks, own bank-owned life insurance as an asset on their balance sheets. It's interesting when you really dive into the education around this. All right, so I want you to consider something. Here are some numbers as of 2020. JP Morgan, $11.7 billion in bank-owned life insurance. Bank of America, $22.6 billion. Wells Fargo is $19.8 billion. Now, do the banks know something that we don't? Maybe. There's a reason for this. We're going to get deeper into that here in just a second.